Hi, this is David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I've got Mike Herzog with me today. How's it going, Mike?
Doing great, David. Getting ready for the holiday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's Wednesday right before July 4th. My neighbors had their July 4th party, or their let's just say they had their first July 4th party on Saturday, and the cops came out, said they couldn't be shooting fireworks past 10 o'clock. This was about 11 o'clock, but it was loud. I
Yeah.
guess they had about 5 grand worth of fireworks they blew off that night. It was quite impressive. It is really amazing how much money people can spend on that. Today, on today's,
Every once in a while, you see one of those, neighborhood or home displays that's like, wow, like that was really, really good. And that's, yeah, how many zeros were on the end of that when everything was said and done? But it's neat. I mean, some
oh
people
yeah,
really, really get into it around here.
people go all out on that in Nebraska. Anyways, I'm going to a fireworks show in Waterloo tonight, so that should be interesting. But let's see. So for today, we have a UK group has slightly different strategy going into 5 minute charging. And then we've got a Tesla owner that debunks some common EV myths. A couple of Amazon electric vans caught on fire. We're going to talk about that. And then our real big headline is about leasing a new Nissan Leaf, a new Nissan Leaf
New Nissan Leaf. All
for
right.
$19 a month.
What?
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that. Tesla sales announcements, BYD's 1200 horsepower sports car. And if we get to it, I've got something about Chat GPT helping the EV transition. I don't know. We may skip that one because it looks like it may be behind something goofy, but we'll see, because I hate that when we get to those. But anyways, let's start out talking about so this UK company called Nyobolt. They have a prototype EV needs less than 5 minutes to charge. Now we've talked a little bit prior about like Gravity charging company that's got the charging stations that are 800 volt
800.
out in New York City, and they can do 5 minute charging. And it turns out, and turns out a few Hyundais, even from 2022 and 2023, actually have the 800 volt architecture. And I didn't actually realize that. I had
cards, like the specs where they have, Department of Energy has a lot of them listed, and a lot of them have the 800 volt, new models.
Yeah, for 24 and 25.
They're preparing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
they're preparing for it. And people, they always talk about, well, I don't want to go charge for 40 minutes. But these are talking about putting approximately 40 miles of range in your car every minute, which is, if you think level 2 charging, that's like 40 miles of range every hour, right?
Yeah.
And this is every minute. So anyways, let's see what we got here. So Nyobolt showed off its prototype EV, where its latest real-world tests at the Millbrook Proving Ground in England took less than 5 minutes to get it from 10% to 80%. That's faster than the fastest charging EVs like the Ioniq 6, which takes 18 minutes to get from 10 to 80%. Now, that 18 minutes, I think that Ioniq 6 has that 800 volt architecture. But the fact is that the only 800 volt chargers I'm aware of are those ones in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure they're expanding that. That was about 2 months ago, maybe we reported on the Gravity chargers.
Yeah.
They've probably put more in other places. I'd really hope that is, going to be fruitful for them. But I'm sure that if you have cars that charge that fast, you need more infrastructure, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure there's some challenges to making that happen.
It's all load shape, and it's one, you need to deliver so much energy. If you deliver it over 12 hours or 8 hours or 2 hours or 20 minutes or 5 minutes, it's all, you can't get away from how much energy it delivers. So how big is that spike going to be is what it all comes down to. So yeah, it's a little scary. I was talking to some people yesterday about it, and just some of the safety concerns too. Once you start to get up into that high voltage at a commercial location like that, and it's a big one. It's a big one. There's a lot more concerns at those higher voltages too.
Yeah, I have seen, and I don't know what companies are trying it, but apparently some companies are trying to come out with, dual battery architecture so you can charge from two different chargers at the same time. And so there's some concepts coming out that will really enhance getting,
covered one of
quick
those.
charging.
Was it the Tesla super truck? It's not the Cybertruck.
The mega. So those are mega chargers. Yeah, so they're doing that for tractor trailers. Yeah. Well, they'll be charging two at once.
Yeah.
And even then, it's a much more power. It's the 800 volt architecture. So still that's only putting in, if you're doing it two, that would be what, 80 miles a minute you're adding there. That's still pretty fast. If you look at a diesel truck, when they're loading up both sides and they're pumping diesel into both, but that gives them about 1,300 miles of range when they're doing both. They're sitting there for a while pumping in, I don't know how many hundreds of gallons of diesel they're pumping in there, probably 150 on each side. That takes a few minutes.
Well, and I was even wondering at just a regular old vehicle, when you're at the pump and miles per gallon and what you get. And I mean, if you got a slow day on one of those pumps, I mean, you're getting a couple of gallons per minute, which isn't that much faster than this when everything's said and done. But that's,
no, I get it. We're getting some definite, enhancements in what can be done in the charging field, but they're not rolled out everywhere. Okay, they're not really rolled out anywhere. They're just things that are coming out, in the next. Like I said, the only one I'm aware of is one that's in a parking garage in New York City that's even 800 volt. But for this one, for Nyobolt, its battery can achieve fast charging rates thanks to a combination of proprietary anode materials and improved battery cell design and a whole suite of software that enables better charging performance. Some caveats, though: instead of going with a big battery that charges slowly, they have a small battery that can recharge quickly. With a smaller size, it has less battery capacity, which tops out at 155 miles on a single charge. Well, that's not really quite as exciting as some of the. Yeah. So the whole Nyobolt prototype only weighs 2,755 pounds. That's lighter than the Hummer EV's battery by itself. Anyways, they're expecting the prototype's battery life up to 600,000 miles. The only thing with estimating that, where I've seen that people have had to replace batteries in Teslas, are generally people who are constantly charging at superchargers their battery to 90 to 100%. Not one's charging it to 80 that's recommended, but charging it to 90 to 100 consistently.
And across all vehicles I've seen, I mean, that is a universal recommendation for driving, where it's, hey, don't use a supercharger when you have to, and charge to 100% if you know you're going to go a long distance. But yeah, that 80% in level 2 is pretty universal across the board as a recommended practice for these vehicles. So yeah, I mean, if you really are doing this cross country and using it for long distance, I mean, same with everything else. Yeah, it's going to wear out quicker.
All right. Well, I've got a good article for all the EV haters that may be watching. So usually we have people who are big fans of EVs. I've got one for the haters, so people can't say that we aren't, unbiased in our reporting. We cover it all.
Oh wow! So made it even.
Yeah. Electric Amazon delivery vans keep burning down, and the chargers may be to blame. So far there was a fire last year, and there's this one this year. And the one thing they have in common is they were both hooked up to chargers when they caught on fire, and they did set a neighboring van on fire as well. So both fires were big enough that they could put the other one. Now Rivian's aware of this, and they had some discussion on what was going on here. And I'm going to show this. We're aware of the incident and investigating the situation. There was no injuries from the incident. As we are gathering information, it's too soon to say what may cause this thermal event. A few things to point out: there was a few vehicles impacted, but the thermal event propagated from the source to surrounding vehicles. The vehicle was plugged into the charger, but it was not charging when the incident occurred. But yeah, I think that there's always been this fear, and for a long time, people had signs even that you couldn't park a Chevy Bolt in parking garages or certain areas because there was always this fear of the Chevy Bolt catching on fire. And they finally fixed all of that. They recalled all of those that had the problems and fixed those.
It's battery technology, and a lot of the issue you can't hide it. Lithium batteries had issues. I mean, they weren't meant for super fast charging. They weren't meant, a lot of these applications they went in. You could have, violent spontaneous combustion, but boy, they fixed a lot of that a decade ago, and addressed a lot of those concerns.
I know it was like 3 to 5 years ago, but there was that deal with Samsung phones catching on fire.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not completely unrelated, but it's not like they're catching on fire all the time. But I'm just bringing it. There actually was an EV in the U.S. that caught fire, and it was kind of interesting. I want to go ahead.
And today it's spontaneous, right? It was sitting there, and then it started on fire. And that's the news we have at this point.
So last week, or maybe it was the week before, Bill and I were reporting there was a situation. So Colorado has some EV rebates. Okay, they have some tax credits. They have some rebates for people buying EVs, and the Nissan Leaf has been out for a few years. I think there's been over 1 million of them sold in the United States alone since they came out. Mm-hmm. And the original ones had about 80 miles of range. Then they went up to about 150. And I think the new ones have around 200 miles or 200 to 240. So they're getting respectable. It's a small 4-door car. And they typically have some decent features like heated seats, heated steering wheel, and GPS, and a lot of things that just normally wouldn't be standard in a car. And there's a lot of deals you can have on a Nissan Leaf. Okay. Well, last week we talked about a lady that was living in a trailer park. She'd had an 87 Subaru where something went out and she couldn't afford to fix it. But she was looking through the ads and she found a used Nissan Leaf. She qualified for the $4,000 federal tax credit. And then there was this Nissan Leaf was for sale for $7,600. Mm-hmm. She qualified for the federal and then a $3,000 Colorado based on her income. And she ended up paying $650 for a used Nissan Leaf. It was a 2019.
Wow.
And, she'd never had heated seats or a heated steering wheel. Mm-hmm. And here she has this car that she can plug it into 110 because it wasn't a real long range battery from 2019. And she could get all of her driving she needed done. And, so she cut her cost of fuel down by 75% and, got a car almost free. Well, right now, there is a Nissan dealer in Colorado that is offering this crazy deal. You can lease a new Nissan Leaf for $19 per month. It's funny, this title is, you can lease a new car for $19, but it's a Nissan Leaf.
Come on, reporter.
Yeah.
Ouch.
But this is about as close to free as any car has been. Yeah, these guys aren't, obviously, that wrote this aren't EV fans. And I'm not a huge fan of the Leaf, okay? That car is a little small for me, okay? But I'm an enormous dude.
I will say, I've been in a Leaf. I'm 6'1", 215, and there was 4 of us, and I was the smallest person, and we all fit. It was a little tight, but we all got in there, but this was a while ago, an older model. I will say I could see the battery draining when we were going uphill. Then he was like, whoa. It was really, really struggling in
there. Yeah, you're not getting a Tesla here, that's for sure. Okay. But so here's kind of the deal. They're offering 15 brand new leases on a Leaf Model S at advertised 0 money down and a ridiculous $19 per month. So let's see. They have it uses the Colorado state electric tax credit, the federal tax credit, an NMAC credit, and a $1,000 EV cash rebate. You can choose either to pay $695 acquisition fee and $699 dealer handling fee up front, or roll them into your monthly payments. If you don't go over 20,000 miles, you'll end up paying a total of $1,850 to drive it for 2 years. That is not a whole lot of money. If you drive exactly 20,000 miles, and it uses, the average Leaf consumes 4.1, gets 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour, which is better than a lot of EVs. A lot of them get 3 to 3.5. You use around just under 4,900 kilowatt hours. It's 12.28 cents per kilowatt. You'd only spend $600 to drive the Leaf in fuel for 2 years. That's $25 a month for 2 years for fuel.
Well,
there's extra costs like in
the average 12,000 miles per year you put on a vehicle. So 20,
I think that's more normal.
20,000. I mean, I'm just saying it's not super low. I mean, it's reasonable driving of a vehicle throughout the year. It's not, you know, just going to the grocery store kind of thing. It's using it as your primary vehicle.
If you were driving this the same amount, though, instead of being 25 a month, you probably, well, Colorado's got a little bit more expensive gas. You might spend 125 a month.
Yeah.
You know, but it really depends on what vehicle you're driving. I'm comparing it to a similar size car.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not comparing it like to a Suburban.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you've still got insurance, registration, taxes, fees, and the like. That's just an incredibly cheap deal. And I thought, man, that is just cool as can be that we're seeing some of that.
Yeah,
so
that's wild. I mean, that's
there. Oh, it says there's an $8,100 Colorado EV tax credit. Now, I knew there was some deals with federal if you leased an EV. So I'm assuming there's some federal money in there too. But still, that is just an insane deal, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So anyways, let's talk about something fun here. This is, and I realize we're not going to get to see this car in the United States, but you travel abroad, and we talk sometimes about BYD. BYD, one of their brands is called the Yang Wang, which is their high-end brand. And this car here is the Yang Wang U9 electric sports car. 1,200 horsepower Ferrari slaying electric sports car. It's been spotted testing at the Nürburgring in Germany. And let me see, 4 electric motors, 1,200 horsepower. He says it'll leave Ferrari in the dust. Well, Ferrari's putting out some electric cars too. Oh, look at the fancy doors. Let me see. The price is going to start out around 150,000 US, although you can't buy it in the US.
No, you're not getting it.
And it made its debut in February at the Geneva Motor Show. Let's see. Oh, but their initial orders were at about 233,000 US. Pure electric supercars. Let me see what we get here. 1,287 horsepower, 1,200 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 62 in 2.36 seconds. That's pretty quick.
I bet it's fun. I bet it's
fun. We know the Tesla Plaid Model S is a little faster than that in 0 to 60. But the thing is, the Model S isn't truly a sports car. It's not designed, for performance, like a Ferrari or whatever. Like I have a friend who has a collection of Lamborghinis, and he has he has a Model S Performance, before they came out with the Plaid as his daily driver. And he says, 0 to 60, it'll outrun the Lambos. But he said, as far as driving around a track, he said there's no comparison. The Tesla is nothing like sports cars.
Yeah.
And anyways, but it tops performance of V12 engines. Let's see, an SF90 Stadal Ferrari can go from 0 to 62 in 2.5. The Bugatti Chiron does 0 to 62 in 2.4. So it's a pretty damn fast car. Let's see. It's about the same size as a Lamborghini Aventador, coming to a non-US dealership near you.
See, I wonder. I'm not a sports car guy, but I wonder if at something like that, I bet it's smooth as heck. I mean, I bet you hardly feel it. I mean, it'll put you back in your seat, but for that audience, if you really want to hear that engine rev, you want to feel the power, you want to experience that. Whereas EVs in this space,
They're
they
quiet.
go.
You're right.
I mean, they just kind of take off, and it's fun. Even my EV, you really floor it, and the kids love it because it puts you back in your seat a little bit, but it's still just the revving of that engine and downshifting and all of those, like the big feel of like the power that's in there.
No, that's the only thing that's really missing from an electric sports car is the sound.
Yeah.
And I know in some cases, some of the Porsches make sound. They sound like a spaceship taking off.
Oh, mine does when you back up, and it's a spaceship noise. But going forward, get the old Star Trek film reel out and put those on.
It is funny when somebody, because all the EVs have to make a backup noise so you don't run over pedestrians, because pedestrians won't know you're coming. It's really funny how stealthy the cars are. Let's get on to Tesla surprises with better than expected car sales. Tesla sales hit a slump earlier this year, but they delivered in the last quarter 444,000 vehicles in the second quarter, up 14% from the first quarter. That's a pretty big jump, 14%. It was far more than analysts suggested,
and that's
down
Q1
from last
Q2?
year. This was Q2.
Q2? Okay.
Q2, they delivered 14% more, but it was a 5% drop from the same period in 23. So that's still slower. Now, it's really funny because people are going to take this and say, oh, Tesla's 5% slower than last year, so EV sales are dying. But the problem is there's 100 competitors now, and their sales all increased.
Yeah.
And so, you look at Ford and GM are making big jumps, and so are Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes, BMW. They're all making pretty good sales. I was looking at used cars on Carvana at some of the ones that qualify for the plug-in hybrid rebate.
Mm-hmm.
There's a BMW 330e that's a plug-in hybrid, and I was looking to see what kind of range the battery got. 14 miles. 14. And I'm just like, is that just like an acceleration boost? I mean, that 14 miles, I mean, that's a pretty short commute. I was like,
my experience with driving an EV, like that's like room for air. I mean, it's gonna be around that. You accelerate fast, it drops. You turn the AC or heat on and off. I mean, it'll drop up and down that much. I mean, that's
still they were really nice looking cars for a BMW 3 Series to get a $4,000 federal tax credit. I mean, these were all cars that were under, they were around $20,000, and then you get to tag the extra $4,000 off the deal. I thought, that's pretty nice deal, but I was just like, really, that qualified? It's like, that's really not much of a plug-in hybrid there. But
it's
14 miles,
very specific.
You'd like to think as the batteries get better and cheaper that there'd be some way you could swap in a more powerful battery in some of those plug-in hybrids, because a lot of them, they're 40 to 30 miles, and it'd be nice if you could drop in a 100-mile or 120-mile battery, something like that. That would still be what, let's say you put in a 30 kilowatt hour battery.
That's where I look at improvements in the EV space in general. It's that type of innovation where it's like your power tools, right? They come out with a new battery model or something like that. Hey, my old drill battery is starting to run out. Hey, they have this new more milliamp hours, more power density. Yeah, it just swaps right back in. It's plug and play, and you want to see that in that space. So that's, we talked about like the cattle skateboard and different products like that, where it's modular. Yeah, we can swap these in, we can trade them out, and that's the kind of innovation I want to see out of the industry, where you're making an electric car from the ground up. You're not applying electric technology to an existing internal combustion engine model. Like build it for an electric car. make that stuff swappable, make it trade outable as it goes forward. I think it's my kids, my brother-in-law's Power Wheels that he has. They made an adapter for his DeWalt batteries on there, so he's got the 18 volt replacing those, and he said his kids wrecked it the first time they put the pedal on because it just it just really takes off with those new. So it's along that same line. Hey, I've got an old Power Wheels with a big wet cell or dry cell battery on it. Like, nope, just make an adapter for your drill battery and it takes off. It goes really fast.
All right, so
these cars.
I haven't really previewed this last article. We're going to cover Tesla owner debunks common EV myth with a single picture. And this is coming from Australia. And let's see what we got here. I'm not sure if this is the picture or not. Robert ordered his first Tesla car a year ago. Since then, things have seriously changed on Australian roads. So he's got a Model Y here. He didn't have that 10 years ago. But very few people in Australia have as much experience than a West Australian man, Robert, and his wife, Robin. There's scarcely a remote Aussie road or corner of the country they haven't touched with one of their Teslas. One single map of their travels, the couple is able to spell a common EV myth for holding back the transition. After ordering their first Tesla, the couple, who live south of Perth, have road trip around the entire country, from the northern reaches of Western Australia to remote Queensland and down to the EV paradise of Tasmania. I don't know how that, they must have taken a ferry to Tasmania, because I think that's an island. Yeah. They're proof that the only thing holding back EVs is a fear of the unknown. Well, and the Tasmanian devil. I wouldn't want to tangle with him. Robert says, while charging options have improved vastly in regional remote areas, there's a key thing to remember when making the switch and hitting the open road. And they have done their full around Australia trip. Let's see. They ordered one a Model S in 14, and it arrived a year later. In the early days, there was no sales presence. We bought it on an iPad and just trusted Tesla to send us a car. They've since bought a Model Y and spent 21 days driving around the entire West Australian coast, down through the Northern Territory and along the southern border. It was 11,000 kilometers in 21 days. Wow. You know, people want to call them city cars, but they have had no problem doing their road trips. And I see people talk about this all the time, where they've driven coast to coast in the United States. Oh God, there's the picture of all the places they've gone in their Teslas.
It's that line in the middle. I think that's what's debunking this, because that is that's
nothing land.
That is a giant desert in the middle of Australia.
So to put it in perspective, I think like 90% of the Australian population lives between probably here and about here.
Yep.
So they all live on this coast here, and like I think the country's it's a little over 30 million people. There's probably close to 30 million here. There's like 3 million everywhere else. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of people in these areas here. It's pretty hard to survive in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
We charge at home as much as we can using solar, and in some country areas, it's improving vastly. It has improved for sure, but there's some areas that still need work. Reliability of different chargers needs to be improved as Tesla heads towards mass adoption. The Tesla chargers are very reliable. The non-Tesla chargers are not so reliable. That's something, we see in the United States as well.
Yeah, that pops up here. You see in a random parking lot somewhere, a random charger. It's like, boy, that's not ChargePoint. That's not Tesla. That's not a brand I've heard of, and makes you wonder. I mean, it puts fear in you a little bit, but
all right. Well, Mike, that's all we got for today's show. Appreciate you coming on today, and maybe next week we can talk about what you were teaching to the city of Omaha about EVs.
Yeah. There's some cool grid related stuff. I think we can get out there, and hopefully it explains a little more when I go off on my rants on how the grid will be impacted.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching today, and be sure to tune back in. No show tomorrow for 4th of July. We'll be back. I'll be back with with Bill. We'll be back with Bill on Tuesday and Mike on Wednesday. See you guys later.